Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in a minute here. We have attendees still showing up in mass. Welcome. This is the LA SIGGRAPH event, Global Impacts and Roles of Immersive Media. And we're going to get started in just a minute. For those of you who don't know, LA ACM SIGGRAPH is the LA chapter of the Association for Computing Machinery's Special Interest Group, SIG, in computer graphics and interactive techniques. Our chapter was chartered in '91, but we've actually been functioning since the late '70s. And so you have a lot of pioneers in computer graphics as part of this chapter. A lot of the action in computer graphics happened here in LA. Just to get to know, we're actually just completed our election, so we have a new executive council coming in. This is the outgoing council. I'm the outgoing chair, if you will, and these are the members who are leaving the executive council, and also the members who are incoming. And I think Sunil is not with us yet. Sunil is not with us yet, but maybe we'll bring him on later to say hello. And, you know, just to give you a little flavor of what we do here, a lot of meetings where we present technical industry topics, we do some screenings, and we get to work with, because we're centered in LA, we get to work with a lot of awesome organizations. So here. So we do monthly events, maybe about 10 events a year. We've done some really great events. This last one on virtual production with the Lion King. We did one on, this is our second webinar, actually, since the lockdown. So I hope everybody's faring well with the changes and the mass migration into cyberspace. Just so you know, to mark your calendars, the SIGGRAPH conference itself, the North American conference, I should say, there's also an Asia, SIGGRAPH Asia conference, is finally been determined to be launching on 17th of August, and it's going to be a virtual conference. So mark your calendars. And here's some contact info, just so you can stay in touch with us. You can reach the chair here or the chapter here, and feel free to screen grab this link. I thought we might have Sunil, our new incoming chair, say hello. Would you like to jump on, Sunil, and say hello?
Yes. Go ahead. My video is off, so can you put that on? I don't know why.
That one. Let's see here. We'll give it a shot. So it looks like your video should be enabled on our end.
Okay. Yeah, this is something that happens with Zoom.
Yeah, Zoom is notorious for having little bugs like that.
Yeah,
okay.
I have updated and updated, and it's just going to keep doing that.
Okay, well, anyway, just say hello, that's all.
Yeah. Well, I would like to first, thank everyone who voted and congratulate the incoming members of the Executive Council for the 2020-2021 period. Kyle Carlin, the co-chair, Rob Stauffer, vice chair, Elizabeth Cameron, secretary, Dave Kurlander, treasurer, and Sharon Eisenberg, membership. And thanks to everyone in the outgoing committee for all their work, especially dealing with this new reality of the lockdown and moving all our meetings online. Great job. We recently had our planning committee where we come up with events for the coming year. And we'd love to hear everyone's ideas. If you're interested in seeing something or a topic that we haven't addressed, come let us know. Even if you're interested in being the producer for that event or not, our executive council meetings are the second Tuesday of every month. And that's pretty much what I had to say. And I'll give it back to Ed. Thank you.
Thanks, Anil. We encourage everyone to get involved in the chapter, especially the locals. But, now that we're doing these virtual conferences, if you would like to be a speaker, definitely look up Sunil. We have some great topics coming up, and we have open slots on the panels. So I would like to now talk a little about this awesome handbook that came out on the global impacts and roles of immersive media. And we have two moderators, two panels coming up. Jacki Morie, founder and chief scientist of All These Worlds, will be presenting the first panel. And Kate McCallum, who will be presenting the second panel. See here, can't get to my notes. So anyway, I've known Jacki since, I think around 91 or so. She was creating, she's been involved in since 1990, I believe. And she's done so many different things. Scent collar for programmed aromas. She's worked with veterans in the metaverse with meditation, mindfulness meditation. Jacki, a long list of things that you've done. And currently you're with, what is it, the...
Prize.
Yes, the X Prize. You want to tell us a little about that?
So I'm working as a technical advisor on a new prize that X Prize has launched called the ANA Avatar X Prize. So if you all know what your digital avatar is like, you have something new to think about with a robotic avatar coming to your future sometime soon. So,
excellent, excellent. And did you want to talk a little about the book? There's 22 chapters, what is it, 21 authors, I believe?
Something like that. Yeah, you've got it up there. I mean, it really does cover an amazing amount of immersive media. And not only the media itself, but how it impacts us and how it's made. This book covers everything from production to philosophy about immersive media. And Kate and I pooled our resources and got this book done in about 9 months' time. So we are very proud of the work that all of the authors contributed. We had the highest quality authors. We thought we'd have 12 chapters. You can see we have 22 that we ended up with because the work was so good we couldn't leave anybody out. And so it is a wealth of information. We're very proud to have this book out there as a snapshot in time of what immersive media is, does, needs, and how it works right now. So that's a little bit about the book. And thanks to Kate, who was the most amazing co-editor one could ever hope for, and all the authors. And we're getting to hear from several of them today. Plus, I see there are more of them out there in the audience. So it's very cool.
Awesome, awesome. And should add that Kate is working with Vortex Immersion Media as a chief content officer, but she also has her own company, Bridge Arts Media, and she has served many years with the Producers Guild on the National Board and the New Media Council. in addition to producing a number of fulldome shows. And we'll get to see a little of that from the panelists in her panel later. But I think let's go ahead, Jacki, and you can introduce your panelists, and I'll jump off here. And
you have a slide with the 4 panelists that's coming next?
Yes, that's, yes, sorry about that.
I got 4 amazing panelists I want to introduce to you.
Yeah, you should have that right now. And
Yep.
this is, I paused my share, so I just want to make sure everybody sees the book and your faces. So yeah, let's jump into the panel.
And we're giving one of those books away at the end of this event. So here are my 4 amazing panelists that you're going to get to hear from. I'm going to introduce them in no particular order, so it might not be following along here. I'm going to tell you the name of their chapter too, so that you get an idea of the diversity of chapters in this book. So first I'm going to talk about Jess Cantor, whose chapter is called Discovering a Language of Stories in Immersive Storytelling, and an Essential First Step, and indeed it is. Jess is a highly sought after creator of immersive media in many forms and brings to everything she does a unique perspective that includes not only place and movement, but world building alongside her traditional filmmaking skills. In addition to having her work in countless film festivals, her most recent work is called Alcoholocaust, which premiered at the LA Shorts Fest. It's a music video for rising artist Rebecca Pearl and a branded series for Vox Microsoft. Next, I will introduce Eve Weston. Eve's chapter, well, actually, Eve has 2 chapters. One is called The Production of the Biz Nest, which is a sitcom, an immersive sitcom. And the other one is called POV in XR, Point of View in XR, How We Experience, Discuss, and Create the Virtual World. So we'll hear more about that. Eve is a sought-after speaker for her work as a VR artist, a writer, director, with expertise in traditional and immersive production and storytelling. And you'll be hearing a lot more about that today. An interesting fact about Eve is for Disney's Wizards of Waverly Place, she wrote and choreographed a song called The Funky Hat Dance, which went viral on YouTube. I've got to go look that up. Then we have Brian Seth Hurst, whose chapter in this book is called Cinematic Virtual Reality Inside the Story, and it's a real in-depth look at the creation of his work, My Brother's Keeper. He is a multidisciplinary producer, writer, strategist, and consummate storyteller. He has won more awards for the work he has done over the years than I can count, but I want to point out one story that doesn't get as much attention, I think, that he co-wrote with none other than Olivia Newton-John that became a bestseller. It's called A Pigtail from Simon & Schuster. And I do believe there's probably a very interesting story behind that. Our last panelist is Greg Peter Panos, and his chapter is called Humans Enter the Age of Avatarism. What would immersive media be without us being inside of it? So avatarism is where we're headed with that. And Greg is an American futurist, writer, educator, inventor, developer, consultant, and most of all, an evangelist in the emerging field of human simulation. He's been at the forefront of helping this field emerge for as long as I have known him, and that's quite a while. Greg's current passion is pioneering the use of real-time 3D scanning, depthography, point cloud art, and other leading-edge media creation tools and techniques. And if you are very, very lucky, you will be depth scanned by Greg sometime in the future. So that is our group of panelists. And the way we're going to do this part of the panel is you can see everybody on the screen here. And I'm going to be asking questions, again, in no particular order, but I have some questions for the panelists that will hopefully get us to some understanding of how deep their knowledge is in their various aspects of immersive media. So I am going to start with Jess. Your chapter talks about getting to a new language we can use to both create and understand immersive media content. So I want to know what the first project you did that made it clear to you that this was something that was desperately needed.
Sure. The first project I did was a disaster. It's called The Archer, and I made it because I wanted to understand what went into making something for the headset. And I still, at the time, was really thinking like a traditional filmmaker, like a frame. And I was, Video, a company who's no longer around, lent me a GoPro Hero camera, and they said, take some test shots, learn how to make a 360 like still or video. So I went to a friend's backyard and bullet pointed out a story that was meant to be a silent 1920s-esque story about an archer. It's 1.5 minutes long, and I am the archer, and I invite a male suitor to put an apple on his head so I can try and hit it with my bow and arrow, and I accidentally kill him, and the end. And I told it with title cards. And so I like placed the camera, and I played with camera height and like speeding up the image, and I didn't understand anchor point. So I like made an arrow to where the little like silent film title was, like, oh no, don't kill me thing. And so that my viewer would know where to open up the next, like be looking so that the next frame would be where they're meant to stand. And it was really tedious because there were no tools in building that. So I was like exporting and looking at a headset, and I had to use like some weird apps to get it on my iPhone. And then I was like, I had to move the frame to the right a little bit, and I'd go back and like try again. And so it was a very long pipeline for a 1.5 minute project. And a few things came to mind as I started showing. Ended up getting into a festival. So there you go. It was in the Kaleidoscope's first film festival, and it was like one of the early stories in the second wave of VR. And so I watched people watch it, and I started to realize that they were all doing the same choreography that I had asked them to do. They would turn at the same moments, and I could kind of hear the music through the headset. And I was like, wow, I have a responsibility as a creator to instruct my viewer where to look. And if I do a good job at that, they will. And so that was kind of my first thinking of like, yes, I can direct in this medium. But then like all of the things I did wrong, because I was definitely thinking like a 2D artist. So the next piece I made, I really challenged myself to make something that would only work in VR. And so I started to think of world as world and production design, and think, oh, for 2D, I'm thinking about what's going on the screen, but for immersive media, I'm thinking about designing a world, and what does this world mean? And a lot of times, place has character. And so what happens with character? And I started to think of a story where 3 things happen all at once in the story, and you can experience them all at the same time if we're in that location. And so a piece called Ashes, which I talk about in the book, started really helping me develop like how to reimagine all the traditional things I knew from mise-en-scène, but in a way that worked for immersive media. So lighting as a guide for our viewer, camera height and placement for scale. So something is big, you feel it big, and when it's small, like you feel big. And so it just started really tinkering with that. And
like
so that's
you came a long way. It sounds like you came a long way from the sort of silent film title cards for direction.
Yeah, it was like, it was very clear that I needed to start from step 1, but our step 1 of storytelling is not the same as cinema's step 1. So we had to start, I can use some of the same thinking, but I have to reimagine that thinking for an immersive world.
Right. And it's very well outlined in the chapter. So, Brian, I'm going to ask you now. You did a piece called My Brother's Keeper, which is an amazing piece. The chapter covers it in great detail, but I want to ask you, in retrospect, what was the biggest challenge that you found in the process of making that? Was it getting it off the ground, getting someone to believe in you, being able to use the technology effectively? As just said, that, you know, there was a lot of technological stuff that it had to be figured out, or was it something else? What was the biggest challenge?
First, I wanted to thank you and Kate, because the chapter was actually an opportunity for me to pay homage to the creative team, which was amazing. There were angels above this project, and I always think that when a story needs to be told, everything comes together, and it did. I had known the PBS executive for 25 years. They'd asked me to come to PBS to teach them about VR, and then they said, well, we have a primetime series and we'd like to do VR. And oddly enough, that Jess mentioned Kaleidoscope, because at that Kaleidoscope First Festival in LA, I met Connor Hare. Well, actually, I met his girlfriend. I did not get to meet him or Alex Meter, but I only saw 2 minutes of their piece reel, and I knew I wanted to work with them. And so one thing just led to the other. And, you know, my job as a producer is to actually, in this case, shepherd the creative vision and make sure that the brand was on, you know, the piece was on brand for PBS and on brand for Mercy Street, so that the production values matched and everything just was in line. And then Connor and Alex would make certain requests, like, we want to do this in slow motion. So then it was my job to go find a camera that would do 120 frames per second at the time, and none of them would, but John said that they would do it for us. And Connor and Alex wanted to experiment a lot, and I wanted to be, I saw their vision. We had worked on the story together. We actually wrote it in the car on the way from Las Vegas on another job to Los Angeles, and we went to Chicago to a PBS convention and pitched the story. And I tell a lot of the story of how this came about, because I think people need to know what development is like in this. I would say the greatest obstacle, I thought, was going to be money. And oddly enough, I mean, the Technicolor Experience Center was just starting, and Mark Turner and I had been friends for 20 years, and he had got me into a bad stock deal, and I said to him, you're off the hook now. You don't have to worry about that. He said, well, Marcy Jastrow is going to be the head of the center, and we're looking for a marquee project, and I know you must be doing VR, and you must have something. I said, actually, I'm working with PBS. And so they came in, and they gave a tremendous amount of attention and services. And, you know, we were all collaborating on new technologies. Very exciting. It was also very stressful. But then, you know, PBS and post-production and the Virginia Film Commission and Radiant Images, Michael Manzuri was like, I so believe in this story. I'm going to give you the camera. All you have to do is pay for the insurance. You don't have to pay for the rental of the camera. So every time I thought I wouldn't have enough money, and granted, we did not have enough money for real horses, so there are no horses. But it is the story of two soldiers fighting on opposite sides during the Civil War, brothers, who meet one last time at the battlefield of Antietam unknowingly. What is amazing to me is that this story actually has legs. It continues. I continue to get requests like about once a week for distribution. And I continue to get emails of people who have seen it, and it seems to live. And of course, we had no idea at the time. It was before the last election. And we had no idea that the country was going to be so split. And what we wanted to show was the effect on families of a country at war with itself. And it was a dream come true. Everything I Jess talked about writing. And when I write for VR, I basically close my eyes and I write in my head like you're in a dream state. And this was Connor and Alex, amazing directors, willing to take risks, willing to take chances. As a matter of fact, it was their idea to combine 180 and 360 in one piece. Also, had never been done before. And as the brothers get closer to each other, it moves from 360 into 180 stereoscopic. And I love working with them. They're absolutely brilliant. So I give all the credit to the creative team. My job as a producer is to set everything up and get out of the way. And that's what I did.
Well, I'm glad the Angels, you let them stay.
Yeah.
So that worked out well. I think we're going to get to see a little clip in a bit, but I want to move to Eve and ask her kind of the same question. Now, Eve, you had 2 chapters in the book, and one was a detailed description of your immersive comedic sitcom called The Business. And what was the big challenge you found in this? I mean, you guys are inventing something new here. So we probably could spend 6 hours on the challenges alone, but what was the biggest one?
Well, I'm so glad that you pointed out that we were inventing something new, because I think you can look at even the word challenge in different ways. Like, it's easy to see the word challenge and think, oh, well, what are the obstacles that you were up against as you fought to make this, right? Or you could see it as what are the creative challenges that you get to embrace. And I think that was what made me want to make VR in the first place. Is I had a background working, as you mentioned in my bio, in television sitcoms. I'd been doing that for a long, like maybe a decade. And I learned about VR, and I was like, oh my God, this is an amazing platform for storytellers. I can put the viewer inside the story. So that was sort of my favorite challenge. I saw immediately how I could do it, but I got to bring it to life, and that was really exciting. I encountered there were little challenges along the way. I remember one of my actors who was really excited about VR, but kept thinking of it in a very black and white manner, that there's either lean back entertainment that you watch in front of your television, or there's gaming where you're very active, and didn't quite get this middle ground where, you could be engaged in it in an immersive way, but it didn't necessarily require you to do something. And it was so satisfying to get to the end of that process and put the headset of the finished product on his head, and then have him go, oh my God, yes, this is so cool. I get it now. And we came up with this term called choose your own attention, right? We've all heard of choose your own adventure, where you affect the story, but this was choose your own attention. You could look wherever you wanted, and you wouldn't lose the flow of the story because of these sort of narrative design choices we made in the way that we told it. You would follow the story, but you could look where you wanted and discover additional things to enhance your experience, and like bring a whole new definition to reruns, right? If you watch the show again, you will literally discover things you didn't see there before. So that was really a fun part of the process. And I think through doing it, we learned a lot, and we're able to kind of come up with a little tool set for folks who are doing immersive narrative. So I don't want to tip the hat too much, because I'm going to be giving a SIGGRAPH talk, actually, that's a case study of the business and the lessons that it teaches for immersive narrative, but I can kind of tease it a little bit. I talk about how the business puts the viewer's experience first, and it takes that question. A lot of people say when you're developing VR, well, why VR? And I like to say, well, why is the viewer in VR? That's sort of, to me, a more productive way to ask the question. And embracing 360 degrees, and then establishing new artistic conventions. So there really was some innovating, like you said, of, okay, how do I direct the viewer's eye? They can look where they want, but I want to guide them so that if they don't want to do the work, they don't feel lost. They know where the main thrust of this is, and then they can explore as they wish. So there were some directing conventions. Also, I worked with an amazing stage manager, and she helped innovate in the area of notation, right? A storyboard doesn't work anymore because a storyboard is literally you're drawing the frame, and here everything's on camera. So you can't draw everything all the time. Then you're just doing a very complicated animation, and that's not the point. So she came up with path mapping, another way to map out the scene before we would shoot. And then we came up with some new conventions for acting too. I worked with the actors and did little rehearsals and scene tests, in advance of filming, to really figure out what that right tone was, and what style of performance worked best in this medium for this kind of a piece. And then I'll touch on, just as a closing statement, that one of the other challenges is distribution, and I don't want to get into that too much, other than to say that as we continue to have these conversations, and I realize that there's value to be had from learning from our work, I want to make it as accessible as possible. And so I think as early as next week, and maybe even sooner, the business should be available to anyone through my Patreon page on my company website. And hopefully you'll see a slide later with that, or I'll give my information at the end. But yeah, it was a really fun journey. And I think maybe some of the most fun discoveries came on set in rehearsal, when you're doing something and you have this realization, like, oh my God, that made me laugh. That like, let's try to do more of this in the show. I think that process of discovery, collaborative discovery, was really like fulfilling and exciting, because you're right, we're creating something new that hasn't been done before.
Yeah, especially comedy in VR. But it also sounds like part of the challenge that traditional media doesn't have is, you got to train the audience. You got to educate the audience that they're not going to just sit on a couch and watch this. So that and some of the same challenges that Brian and Jess had means that it's challenging in 360, basically.
Yeah, well, it's new. You know, it's new.
Mercifully challenging. All right, I'm going to go to Greg Panos. And Greg, your chapter is on humans entering the age of avatars, avatarism, which is a very interesting word. This covers not only the history of how we digitize our human forms, but it looks to the future of where these techniques might lead us. And my first question to you, I really would like you to kind of go back to those really early days when we didn't know it was going to be quite like this, and convey some of the thoughts that the inventors and early users of human digitization had. You know, what was it like back then when you could do VR, but you rarely had yourself in that VR?
Well, thank you, Jackie. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. So I was at the New York Institute of Technology Computer Graphics Lab, and at the time, and I lost my father. I was 24, 25 years old, and then I was introduced to computer graphics there in a great depth of what was going on. And they were doing computer animated characters and creating shows with avatars. And they hadn't been digitizing real people or working from real human models. But I kind of put two and two together, and my own loss and you know, profound emotional state of dealing with that led me in the direction of paying attention to aspects of technology whereby people were able to archive themselves in 3 dimensions and then render those constructs in real time on computers. So I was moving away from stylized, cartoon-based computer animation, more interested in creating a pathway towards realism for human beings, and more for their own personal sense of evolution and growth and existential concerns they have of being alive and being a human being, and how to use technology to support that condition of humanity that we're all experiencing from our cradle to our grave. And when I was able to identify technologies that companies were making for different reasons, I would try to find a way to digitize myself. So one of the first digitized versions of myself was with a 3D scanner when I was in my early 20s. And every time there was a new technology or a number of years had gone by, I would go create another model and try to abscond with the data and judiciously label it and put it in a shoebox and, you know, keep it for safekeeping. I thought it might be valuable later on in the future. And some of the scans, some of the early scans that I had were basically 3-dimensional versions of myself that in this case was one that I created, a friend of mine created for me with a 3D scanner attached to an iPad. And I'll show you another one. This one was with an iPhone 10 with the depth sensor. That's on the iPhone 10. It's a structured light depth sensor. And then I also moved on to doing portraits and other people as well. Here's Jacki and Patty. And I digitized them at SIGGRAPH. I have a handheld scanner in my phone. I was one of the first people to get one of those about 3 or 4 years ago, before what we have today. And it's a really great little device with lots and lots of capabilities. You can shoot reference photographs as well. And then the reference photographs are a place where you can, you know, change your point of view and restructure it in different ways. And you guys came out really nice. So I've spent a lot of time working with depth-based digitization of spaces and area mapping as well, not just people. So here's the living room. I'm in this living room right now. This took about 5 minutes to scan, waving it around. This is what's called a pure point cloud. It hasn't been turned into polygons. It's not being rendered in polygons. It's being splatted, which is the technique of rendering point clouds, where each colored point is basically a perpendicular, tiny little disk that always is facing you, and there's space next to each other. So the mind fuses it into an actual 3D image. But it's really just a series of dots. And one of the terms that I thought of, which I would like for people to use, is avatarism, because the whole field of 3D digitization and people that are working in this field and the manner in which they acquire the world around them and individuals around them, really the holy grail of that whole field is in creating a life record of yourself, which I called early on a persona form. And a persona form is basically a collection of digital and virtual information of a particular person that's all kept together and can be unified into a construct that can be rendered and come to life and to tell your own life story. And that if you were to create a routine and a habit of digitizing people from when they were very young until they were very old, if they did this like celebrating their birthday every year, they would be able to call it their virtual birthday. So it would be a specific day of the year that you decide to scan yourself. So you go to the gym, clean yourself up, put on some nice clothes, and then you make a deliberate act out of the ritual of a 3D scan. And then you add that to your lifelong construct of your persona form. And when you render it in a high-end machine, you would have an aged dial that you would dial back and forth from when you were very young to when you were older. And that would be one way that you could give people a holistic, holographic, spatial sense of who you are in reality and in your life.
Yeah, move over snapshots. This is going to be the way we record ourselves in the 21st century, and using those to inhabit not only the virtual reality spaces we have right now, but think Brian and Jess and Eve, the audience becoming part of the scene because they can come in with these avatars, and that changes everything. Thinking, Jess, you're going to have to expand that new language. I'd like to go to Eve for a second and talk about your other chapter. And Greg, we'll look at some more of this hopefully in a little bit. But the other chapter that Eve wrote was a scheme for classifying point of view. Now, you're the avatar master here, Greg, and that avatar can go into these kinds of immersive situations, whether they're stories or experiences or games or things that help us with our health or whatever it is. But there are so many ways of looking at that point of view. And Eve, could you talk a little bit about the system that you came up with? I know we don't have time to go into it, but believe me, it's a very wonderful, deep chapter that everybody should read.
Sure. Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about sort of what inspired it, and then I'll kind of give an overview of how it works. But I was teaching 360 virtual reality filmmaking at Emerson College, Los Angeles, and I wanted to talk about existing 360 work with my students, and then I wanted to talk about what they could do in VR. And as I was trying to put together this lecture, I just realized there weren't any words to talk about it, to really say what I needed to say. And so I started thinking about how I could break down a piece of immersive content in a constructive way. And I liken it to, if you're reading a book and you've got first, second, and third person, right? And if somebody comes up to you and says, oh, I read this amazing first person novel, you immediately know that the character in the book is telling their story. I went to Hogwarts or whatever, right? You get it. And that terminology works great for books, and we've applied it pretty successfully to movies and television. But when you take it to VR, you start to run out of language, because not only do you have narrative point of view like you have in books, you have visual point of view like you have in movies, but then you have something else, right? You have the effectual point of view, right? What effect you have on the story scene, right? Are you a non-entity where no one in the scene knows you're there? They can't even tell. It's like you're an invisible fly on the wall. You're a ghost. Are you an entity where the people in the story might know that you're there, but you can't do anything, but they see you, right? Or are you a participant where you can actually do something and it has an impact on the story scene? And that's not even all, right? And then after that, there's still effectual point of view, which is what effect can you have on how you're experiencing the scene, which is, it almost feels a little bit meta, but Jess created a piece that's a really good example of this, which is, that you can switch to different, you can, what's the word, like teleport, right?
Choose.
Without, you can choose what vantage point you want to see the scene from. So yeah, so those are some of the different options, and it really breaks down quite nicely into sort of 4 main point of view tiers. There are more, because when you get into the kind of amazing work that Jacki does and you start adding scent to stories, and that's a whole other, that's the olfactory point of view. But at this point, most pieces don't have that, right? So we've got these sort of 4 tiers that each break down into sort of 3 branches. And it's a nice way to organize your thoughts. And it works at all stages. So it works in a classroom setting or in a critical setting if you want to talk about and analyze an immersive story. It gives you a language with which to analyze whether the storytelling is effective and what is affecting you in which ways. And Jessica and I are going to talk a little bit later about a project that elaborates on that. But it's also great for creating content if you're working with someone else on a team and you need to clearly state what your objectives are and what kind of a piece you're going to design before you design it. It's really helpful. And it also serves as a menu of options. So if you're kind of relatively new to immersive content creation, and so many people, I think, get excited about it and they just make the first thing that comes into their mind, and sometimes that's great, right? But sometimes if you know what's possible, you can make choices that are most effective for the type of experience that you want to create. And so this is what it does, is it sort of, this taxonomy lays out a menu of options, and then you can choose. You're empowered as a creator to really give the viewer the experience that you want them to have.
Right.
And I've been really thrilled with feedback of people using it in that way. A colleague of mine recently was creating a 360 documentary, and she mentioned to me that after talking with me about the taxonomy and our other work, she had applied it to her documentary and to the cameraman she was working with, and when she sort of laid it out that way, he knew exactly what kind of an experience she was going for. And so it just, it's efficient, right? I give the example sometimes of at a conference, somebody will ask me about the biz nest and it'll be a series of questions. They're like, well, are you in it? Are you a character? Can you do anything? It's 20 minutes. So this really boils it down to 5. And just to speak to that point, I loved when you were talking about what Greg's doing with avatars, that, soon you can put the viewer in the story. I mean, it's just, that will allow the storytelling I'm doing to grow, because in the business, you actually are a character. You just don't have that wonderful body that he's giving us. So I love how everything we're doing is sort of working together, but hopefully that's helpful with the taxonomy.
So the POV taxonomy, I think, as we matured this immersive media, as you said, using different POVs is going to emphasize different parts of the story, and what whoever is creating that story wants to emphasize and wants to give you in terms of agency in this part, maybe no agency in that part, whatever it happens, make you God in this part.
Exactly, and feeling, and it has a real impact on how you feel. I think
right.
that it's a real tool. Jessica and I have talked a lot about a piece where you think that they put you in a place where you think that they would treat you like a person, but then they don't treat you like a person, they ignore you, and it's really yeah, it really is. And so we want to make sure that as creators, that those choices are conscious.
Yeah.
That if you're alienating the viewer, it's on purpose and it's not an accident. So having this taxonomy helps inform those choices.
Yeah, it's going to help define a lot. And I want to take it to Brian, the consummate storyteller, who you're making these beautiful narratives, and the narratives do have a narrative arc and an authorship to them. But when you get the kinds of things like Greg's avatars coming into the scenario, and the point of view taxonomy, where you can choose different aspects of how a person is interacting with your film, what does that do to authorship and narrative? How strongly do you think we have to hold on to an authored narrative in what's coming down the line here in immersive media?
So I have pledged for myself to get cinematic virtual reality right. So whatever tools, to me, it's first I'm going to tell the story. It's like I have a paint box in front of me, and what colors are going to enable me to tell that story. I like to keep things as simple as possible and as direct as possible, and to have people have a relationship with my characters. And so in the pieces that we do, you'll notice, I mean, it started with My Brother's Keeper. That's the first time we did that camera movement that allowed for close-up. In the end, and I don't want to give away the ending, but when the end comes, you are face to face with those brothers. And so to me, I you know, as Eve was speaking, I was thinking, you know, it's funny, it's a good thing I don't teach this stuff, because when I communicate with the directors, or I communicate with writers, or I communicate with the crew, I see it in my head and I describe it. But to me, cinematic, I'm the author. And, you know, I worked with Tim Crane for like 7 years of my life. And when we talked about, you know, user-generated content and the user having roles in the story and fan fiction and all of that, to John Chu, who I've also worked with, to John, it was like, yes, we'll give a certain amount of agency to the viewer. To Tim, it was like, well, I want to be the one to open the door for you that you walk into. And I think maybe in a traditional storytelling sense, I would like, along with my directors and writers, I would like to be the one that opens the door for you. However, I haven't used POV a lot because I find it disorienting, because you don't know where your hands are, and it's still not real to me. It's still not real. But if a tool is appropriate to forwarding a story, I liken it to a musical comedy. If the song in the musical comedy drives the story forward, then it should be in the show. If it doesn't drive the story forward, if it doesn't enhance your relationship with the character or the characters with each other, then I have to rethink it. And we didn't do storyboarding. We don't do storyboarding. It's very interesting because I think we're still hacking. I think a lot of people have, and you know, when I read the book, I thought about this. I thought, well, I didn't do it that way. If I had done it that way, would it work that way? And even to the point where, you know, I'm dissatisfied with the cameras that are out there. So every piece I do, I go to Michael Manzuri and say, this is what I want to do. What can we do in terms of a camera? Which is, I mean, thanks to Michael, we now have a camera where the lens and the sensor can be up to 2 miles away from the body of the camera, which gives us the freedom to shoot underwater. And so I think that I love this field because we're still hacking, because it's still developing, because Eve is developing the language she is, and Gregory is doing the avatarism as he is, and Jess, I met Jess when and I don't mean to make Jess sound old, but I met Jess when I first got into this. When I first left television to do this, Jess was one of the first people I met at VRLA, and I don't know that she remembers me, but I remember her. And I was thinking, you know, this is great when you take the traditional language of film, and then you ask, and you know, I've I've produced live 360 as well, music festivals, hip hop, that kind of stuff, and have had to ask directors who hadn't directed before to forget everything they knew, learn the new tools, and then bring what they know back in. And so the traditional background of Eve and Jess and Gregory, this adds, we bring the language with us that we're used to bringing, and whatever works. And, you know, I'm famous for breaking rules, mostly my own. So if I make a rule and I think that's the way it's going to work, I'm totally willing to let go of that and break that rule. And that's to me, that's so important when you're working with creatives, when you're working with the directors, when you're working with even the actors. I mean, our actors were amazing. And ideas can come from anyone at any time. even a PA on the set might have a different idea. And so my job is to keep my mind open to that. And if it's going to break a rule, well, the first question I ask myself in production is, okay, how much is that going to cost to break that rule? But
All right, you're
once I have that answer, then can I do that? So this is a long way of saying is that right now I'm working in this cinematic VR box looking for the tools that I want, because I truly, truly, truly want to perfect cinematic VR as an art form. So I may never, well, I won't say never, but I may not have interactivity in a 6-dot narrative. I might not give you that agency. I might give you the opportunity to be taken into the story and to have a visceral experience of the story. But that might be all I ask of you as the viewer.
And it's a continuum. So I think we have room for all of these things as we're inventing, and the words and these, you know, and one thing I want to say about the book is the book has the words. It's got the first draft of all the words that we're going to need in the future. Maybe not all of them. And it's got structure, and it's got production stories of everybody who's, as you said, hacking this new medium. And I like inventing, but hacking is kind of what it feels like when you're down there saying, oh God, now what do I do? I want to ask Jess real quickly, you know, the POV thing, one of the things that we've talked about is the environment as a character. How does that fit in with the POV kind of structure of Eve, or do we have to have yet another section of that taxonomy?
I think, I don't know. I mean, I use in my film Ashes, which Eve has done the taxonomy for. I couldn't tell you from the top of my head, but maybe she can.
Yeah.
But I used like the location itself, and as a way to, the location is the center of the story, and it's bringing forward a memory of this location and how you have ghosts from your past sometimes in your mind. And so, and I break this down in the chapter. And to your left, you have a couple falling in love. In front of you is a tragedy of the same couple, and on your right is the woman returning to spread the ashes. And it's told through dance, and it's all happening at once. And the middle part is actually happening in reverse, which I don't know why I did that, but when I did make the choice, it gave me the feeling I was looking for of it was a memory. It was haunting. It was a memory that was haunting us while we were watching it and decoding it. And it couldn't be literal, you know? And so by having the subtlety of it, like, I think most people don't even realize something is in reverse until like they see a bird walking backwards, yeah. And then it clues them. And because it's like, when in your life do anything be backwards and forwards in your world at different times? So it's a kind of expanding how your mind can even process.
Yeah.
And I was really nervous about showing it. And it was at Tribeca in 2016, I think 2016. And because it was so early and people putting on headsets mostly for the first time, and then I'm messing with how their brain works. So I was like, people are gonna hate this. It was so, like, I've never been so nervous in my life. And I definitely had some people who just missed the whole thing and stared at rocks, and they still liked it because they were just in a world. And so I think location of story, I mean, that's a fail from me as a creator, someone staring at rocks the whole time, but she was the minority.
But you just introduced time as a character in the story. So, you know, there's so much between the structure of the story, time, location, characters, ourselves, what Greg's doing with avatars, and how that's all going to fit in. And all these little nuances that get invented. You said, you know, you don't know why you did the thing going backwards, but man, that's brilliant. That's Eisenstadt going, you know, some really new cool stuff for immersive media. Greg, we do have a question about programs you use for final output, but I kind of want to go bigger than that and say, you know, let's talk for a couple minutes, and then we'll wrap up with something with Jess and Eve that I have to cover. But we only have a few minutes left. Talk about who owns your data, I think it's going to be one of the ethical conundrums of the next 50 years. Who's owning that data? You've got yours stored in a shoebox somewhere, but does that mean you own it, or how do we navigate that?
Well, you know, possession is 9/10 of the law. So as long as you have it, you own it as far as I'm concerned. Whether you use it or not is subject to someone else's ability to wrestle it away from you or prevent you from using it. Certainly if it's you and it was taken from you like a photograph, there are laws that protect that. There was a terrific law professor who I was very close with for a while, and his name was Dr. Joseph Beard from St. John's University. And he was absolutely prolific in writing and creating feasibility of law as applied to avataarism. He wrote a lot of papers about virtualization of Hollywood, from forest lawn to avataarism. And I can't remember the names of all of his papers, but anybody that was really interested in the deep dive should look at that. Some of it is in the book chapter that I created, and Jacki and I reviewed some of it, but there are other links that you can find of PDFs of work that he's done in this particular area. I've always encouraged actors to take possession of their data, to try to have somehow a contract or an agreement with anyone that's digitizing them for a particular project, even if it's a series of scenes in a movie that a studio is doing, and they're the ones that are scanning you and everything else, that you at least retain a copy on a hard drive, and you understand or have written down the format of the data, so you can retrieve it later on and you can translate it into a different kind of format. And a lot of what I do is taking off-the-shelf tools that either were useful or failed in the marketplace, that have some kind of usability, and finding out what kind of source data they create, and then modifying the data and translating it into different formats and bringing it into other programs so you can utilize it. For regular people that aren't so technically inclined, if it's more than just a few steps, it becomes too complicated and they give up on the process. But I think we're not going to have to worry about that in the next couple of years, because companies like Apple are putting depth sensors on their phones, both on one sensor that faces you for facial unlock and features like that, and avatar-based telecommunications. And then they're also putting a sensor on the other side for area mapping, for augmented reality, and to register an environment so you can overlay virtual constructs in that environment accurately. But one of the fun things to do with the depth sensor, if you have an outward facing sensor or a camera or a device with a depth sensor that's handheld, is to do an area mapping of your room and your home and places that you visited, and then studiously squirrel away the data and label it and say, you know, living room, 1995, Long Beach, and later on in years to come, as it becomes easier to ingest this data and not have to worry so much about the specifics of the engineering of the translation of the data, to make it come alive again, and to possess it, and to experience it, and to position yourself into the data. I can give you a very quick little example if you like.
It needs to be quick. We only have a couple minutes left, so.
Oh, okay, all right.
Oh.
I don't think you,
Hey, our book is in the metaverse.
hopefully you can hear me. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So
Yep.
here, I translated the book into a 3D construct, and I placed it in a few different places in my room, and this is my Oculus home. So this is another example where there's a COVID-19 related art show that was done outside in one of the alleys near where we live. So people basically put their artwork onto this billboard, which went about halfway down the block. And I digitized Richard posing like a cat, because it was called the Alley Cat Art Walk. And in it is also a 3D scan of my face, probably 20 years ago, that I did with another piece of technology. Oh, here's the book again. And then here I am inside, you know, the room over the fireplace, looking at my facial data there. And,
I love this, Greg. I love that you practice what you preach. You live this stuff, and you are probably one of the most thoroughly digitized civilians that I know. We have a couple minutes left, and I would like to end with what Eve and Jess have done since finishing their chapters from the book. Rather than taking a well-earned rest like I did, they decided to start something totally new, and this is called the Look Club, and I would like them to spend about 3 minutes talking about it.
Okay.
I'll
Great.
share a slide while you start.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally fair.
Okay.
Visuals and narrative. So, so Jessica and I were getting together with another friend and colleague who's also a VR creator, Erica Barraza, and we realized that there were a couple of things that we felt like were missing in the immersive space. You know, amongst the three of us, we were talking about immersive narrative, but there wasn't a greater conversation the way there is around Netflix shows. You know, and we want people to know what's happening inside the headsets so that they want to come inside the headsets. And so we founded the Look Club, which is an entry point into immersive narrative that's meant for anyone who's new to immersive, but also the experts. Like anyone at any level can find it valuable. And we've sort of taken a two-part approach. So the first part is the look.club, which is our website, and that's a searchable database of immersive narrative. And you can search by titles, you can search by director, but you can also search by immersive point of view. So if you do a VR experience and you're thinking, gosh, I really love to be a participant in it. Or if you're like Brian, who prefers something cinematic, and you're like, well, I want to be in the space, but I don't want to have to do anything. I don't want any game engine interaction. You can search by that and get a list of experiences that suit your interest. And then the second part of the Look Club is a review show. So we say it's kind of like Siskel and Ebert for VR with a Tina Fey sensibility. So Jessica and I are co-hosts along with Erica Barraza, and each episode takes a look at one piece of immersive narrative content, and we break it down. We tell you a little bit about it. We give you some background, a little humorous introduction. We show a clip from the show. Then we give you our sort of candid reactions, and we talk about what's effective and not effective for storytelling purposes, right? What techniques they used, what point of view they used, and how that made us feel. And then we kind of give you a review, you know, 0 to 2 thumbs up. Thumbs are always up because immersive is hard, and we applaud everyone who's doing it. And then we kind of give a little summary at the end. And so we're hoping that that will sort of help move this industry forward, get more people interested in seeing what's inside of the headsets, and also talk to those who are making it, and let people learn. Because I think Jessica and I both learned from what was out there. You know, as early as when I was in high school, I was going to college film classes and learning about the, you know, Lumiere brothers. And then, you know, I studied sitcom for ages to try and learn how to tell those stories in that format. And we're really just starting with immersive narrative.
Yeah.
And so we're creating a place where people can come and learn and enjoy and be entertained and be part of a conversation.
It's so desperately needed. And you guys, after our panel's done, paste the link in the chat window for all of the attendees. You've got to watch the first couple episodes, because it is truly entertaining and amazing, and it will make you look at immersive media in ways you haven't done before. So I highly recommend the show, and that's one of the amazing things that's come out of this book. And now I think we're going to turn it over to panel 2 and Kate. So thank all of you on panel 1. You guys offered so much wisdom to the attendees, and so much in the chapters you wrote for the book. So thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Awesome panel, Jacki and team. And yeah, so I would like to go back to reintroduce Kate McCallum. Kate's a multimedia producer, writer, media strategist. Her emphasis is on IP development, transmedia, and new media technology platforms. So she worked 20 years at NBC Universal and Paramount TV in feature film development, production, She launched Bridge Arts Media and is currently producing fulldome projects with Vortex Immersion Media. Kate's a member of the TV Academy, Producers Guild of America, where she served as a board delegate for PGA's New Media Council and the National Board. And she's produced numerous talks and workshops internationally. Anyway, pleased to have Kate come on and introduce our next panel.
Thank you so much, Ed, and thank you to Leonard and SIGGRAPH for hosting this fabulous event. We're so pleased that we've had this chance to share such the book and such amazing authors that have contributed. And wow, on panel one, you guys did a great job. And it's so interesting because this topic of immersive media and entertainment expands such a wide kind of category. When we started the book, we many people referenced, including myself, like the parallel of what this kind of transition looks like is so similar to the turn of the century when silent film was emerging into our culture. So we now have immersive media emerging in a similar way. So including the headsets and AR and the avatars and metaspace, we also are including in this conversation immersive full dome experience where the audience is inside a venue, not just a headset. So, and also location-based entertainment. So I will, without further ado, introduce the next four panelists and get going with our conversation. So Mickey Raymond is actually coming to us from Germany. Thank you to Mickey. It's very early in the morning for him, but we're so pleased that he's a part of this. Mickey, together with Kelly Francis, wrote the chapter Towards a Full Dome Manifesto, Tour de Horizon for the Immersive Inclined. And Mickey is a professor for immersive media at Bauhaus University in Weimar, Germany. He initiated and directs the annual Jena Full Dome Festival, which is now in its 14th year of existence. So in Mickey and Kelly's chapter, they've explored full dome as a medium, venue, and genre while pointing to its promise for the advancement of immersive media. The time for a full dome manifesto has come because full dome is an immersive surround communal medium, and it's happening now. And then next we have Michael Doubt. And Michael Doubt wrote the chapter Immersive Storytelling, Leveraging the Benefits and Avoiding the Pitfalls of Immersive Media in Domes. So Michael has quite a diverse background on and off stage, in front of and behind the camera, and has been an international speaker as well. He has worked in immersive media, most specifically full dome, for over 20 years as a writer, producer, director, and editor. As an advocate for pushing the boundaries of a medium that started in the planetarium space, he has shown in his work and in his work with immersive.org that the full dome canvas can be used to tell incredibly powerful stories about topics that go beyond astronomical topics. His chapter dives into these topics and more. So welcome to Michael. Ed Lance, who's been wearing two hats tonight, also authored a chapter called Immersive Domes, Next Generation Arts and Entertainment Venues. And Ed is the founder, president, and CTO for Vortex Immersion Media, and is an entertainment technology engineer, entrepreneur, and immersive experience designer. Like Michael and Mickey, Ed's career prior to Vortex was in the planetarium space, where he designed and created both venues and content for the planetariums. He founded Vortex Immersion Media in 2008 to bring the power of the full dome format into the mainstream. Ed's chapter presents case studies for emerging applications of digital domes, reviews dome theater design basics, and identifies trends that indicate that these venues are on track to become mainstream arts and entertainment centers delivering global impact at scale. And finally, we have Leila Amer Sadeghi, and she is the Chief Growth Officer at Cleanbox Technology and has over 20 years in entertainment, technology, and live events. And she's developed digital products across mobile, web, OTT, AR, and VR, as well as launching award-winning marketing campaigns for some of the world's most notable brands and startups, including Microsoft, Disney, Warner Brothers, Meow Wolf, 2-Bit Circus, and NBC Universal. Leila has operated venues in London and San Francisco and is the co-creator of the Unreal Garden, the world's first mass mixed reality location-based experience. Most recently, Leila joined smart tech hygiene company Cleanbox Technology, overseeing the sales, marketing, partnerships, and innovation, and driving strategic relationships across education, entertainment, enterprise, healthcare, and government. And her chapter, Location-Based Entertainment, How Immersive Technology Can Make Us More Human, explores the impact that this growing industry will have on more traditional entertainment, retail, hospitality, art, and education spheres, and touches on the history and background of venues and players, demonstrating diversity, creativity, and inimitability in execution. By taking a look at the power of immersive storytelling, she touches on the future of location-based entertainment and its ability to inspire ideas, conversation, and community. So without further ado, welcome to our panel. And I'd like to start with the first question for Mickey. Mickey, your chapter is, you're calling a manifesto for the fulldome format. And as the founder of the world's most prestigious fulldome festival, it is truly, I've been there and it's fantastic. You had to deal with the impact of COVID quite personally recently and launched the festival virtually this year. So bravo to you and your adventurous team. Can you share more about the festival, how it has informed you and your thoughts about the virtual version of it?
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, to get up early. Actually, the sun is just coming up over where I am. There is a strange relationship between manifesto and practical festival. Manifesto is more about preaching and the festival is more about practicing. And so in the chapter that I wrote together with Kelly Francis, it's more about a rebel-rousing rant and rave, whereas the festival that we practice, it's really more about inviting people in to share their work. And to place this in the Jena Planetarium, which is, by the way, the oldest in continuous operation in the world, we wanted to bring, or we have brought for the last 14 years, practitioners, students, rebels, professionals from the fulldome scene together to invite them to share their work. Now, before Corona, we had already called out and invited producers to send in their stuff, which they did. And we had this amazing array of fulldome productions, full feature shows, short films, and so forth. And the date was fixed. It was May 13th to 16th. But when all planetariums closed down, we kind of hit the fast forward strategy button and said, well, we want to do this nonetheless. So we decided to fast forward into redesigning the whole festival as a virtual festival in a 360-degree Cyberdome streaming format. That sounds difficult. It was, but most of it actually succeeded. And so that brought the chance to not just waste time and wait for things to be better, and we never know how good they actually will be anytime, and allow the 360-degree artwork and documentaries and astronomical shows to be shared with the audience. So we had, in 3 days festival, we had 23 hours of live streaming. We had 3,000 viewers from 26 countries all over the world. We were happy and exhausted. And we also, and this is something, if you allow, I want to introduce some character to you and to the audience, which is this guy here. I hope everybody can see. Now, you may think it's a character that starts with an O, but you're mistaken. This is not Oscar, this is a Janus. And the Janus is a trophy for the fulldome scene. Janus, because this Roman deity is known for its double-headed features. It has 2 pair of eyes. And look into the back end of the back and the front. And this is actually exactly what you need. You should be equipped with 4 eyes if you really want to cherish and enjoy all the good stuff that's happening in the dome in a 360 projection space. So this is the award that people earn when they are awarded with a fulldome award. They get the Janus. Actually, we just shipped some of them to various locations. One went to I think Michael Dodd has received it by now, to Ms. Merica. We had 7 Janus Awards giving out, and that's basically the nature of the festival. Encourage daring, gutsy, courageous experimentation. The festival, be it streamed or live, and of course later this year we will be live again and location, defines itself as a big test tube, and we invite willing guinea pigs to immerse and jump in and see what's happening and what comes out in interacting with these people.
Mickey, did you, oh, there we go. Ed's gonna share that visual. Thank you, Mickey. Fantastic. Really, really wonderful. Next up is Michael Doubt. We have a similar to Mickey. You've spent 20 years working in the planetarium space and have also produced full-dome content for that market. In your chapter, you covered the difference between traditional narrative storytelling techniques and full dome. So can you speak to this a bit more, Michael, and can you tell us about your current experiences as well and what you're working on?
Sure, absolutely. And thanks so much for inviting me to participate and to contribute to the book. It was quite an amazing experience, and it was kind of fun to go through the thought processes that I've kind of been considering for my career and the thoughts that I've had, and just crystallize those into the chapter. And one of the things that is important to take away from what I put down to the page is that cinematic language is unique to the medium in which it exists. You can't just take the language of print and apply that to cinema, and you can't just take the language of cinema and apply it to VR, or take the language of VR and apply it to the dome. Everything has its own way of approaching things, and unfortunately it doesn't come with its own manual. It just is what it is. And full dome specifically, where you're inside a space, that it's a hemisphere that surrounds you on all sides at 360 degrees, you're in this unique and transformative space that's very similar to VR, except it's not personal. It's not isolating with one headset where you're by yourself, but you're actually in a communal experience where you can be together with your friends and family and experience something together. In fact, in the research for the chapter, I found something that just blew my mind. Back in the day when Edison invented motion pictures, the first device for presenting movies was called a kinetoscope. And there's a picture of it in the chapter, and I should have brought one with me, but basically it's a device that you look down into and the film plays, and it's for an individual person. So it's analogous to virtual reality, but a motion picture camera or a motion picture projector can present movies to an audience, and that is what full dome actually is. So it sort of delivers on the promise of VR with an audience in a communal experience. And so it's really powerful in that regard. And going back to the planetarium origins, I've always found it interesting because domes started out in planetariums, and planetariums sort of dated full dome and all that can be done with video technology. Planetariums started with an optical instrument that was in the center of the theater that projected points of light across that dome surface to replicate the night sky. And there was a beautiful quality to that because the environment was very dim and the dome sort of appeared and you just saw those points of light. It was a really, and still is a very amazing experience, but it's also a limited experience. It can only do observation of the stars from Earth. And when you transform that space into the capability of digital full dome, you can tell pretty much any story that you want to tell in that space. But because of its origins, a lot of the stories that we've seen up to this point have been based around astronomy, but it doesn't have to be locked into that genre. It can tell all kinds of stories.
It's very similar to the conversation Jessica was having in panel 1. I do believe that we're all still working out some of the formulaic language of translating narrative into the format. I've been so fortunate to collaborate with you and Ed too, which you'll both probably be talking about a bit more, and on a show, full dome show called Mesmerica. Did you want to show a little clip about that now, or do you want to wait? Is this the right time to show it?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Ed, for us.
Thank you.
Mesmerica is an hour-long, fully immersive show that is a combination of James Hood's music along with artists and their works of art, animation from all over the world.
Mesmerica uses the power of immersive media that fills your field of vision to evoke unique brain states. So in particular, he's using the power of the format to evoke positive brain states like happiness.
The concept behind Mesmerica is to bring a sense of well-being to the audience. It's playful, it's awe-inspiring, it creates a sense of wonder.
Well, this show is unique because it's multidimensional. So you have the imagery that goes on over your head in the dome. Then you also have James' performance on stage. You don't really see a lot of live shows that do that. It's kind of one or the other. It's quite a unique show, and James is quite a unique performer. We love his vibe. We love what he brings to the table.
So working with James is particularly interesting because he is an incredible collaborator, and the music is really sort of my script of what images to use and when and how fast to make them and what transitions to use. So when you come in and see this show, it really will transport you into hopefully something really, really cool that you've never seen before.
And basically, I would like people to feel happier than when they came in and to realize that that came from within them and their own awareness purged them of some bad mood or some stress, and they feel just a little bit lighter and a little bit maybe inspired by what you can do with your own awareness.
And this is our very first show that we're premiering at the San Diego Planetarium, and it's sold out. The first show sold out. So we added a second show, which also sold out in just 2.5 days.
Yeah, it was phenomenal, unreal, something that I've never seen before.
I recommend it because you would feel more happy and more relaxed.
I feel so elevated and I feel so light right now. I feel happy.
It was beyond words. It was amazing. I've never seen anything like it before in my life.
My favorite part was the way that the visuals came at you. It surprised your brain. You never knew what to expect.
It was almost like overwhelming the way it would make you feel.
It almost became an out-of-body experience. It was absolutely amazing. Everybody should come check this out.
Really great. I love how they played I think it's a happy drum, and all of that in the light suit that the guy was wearing. That was a pretty cool show.
I didn't realize the hour was over.
Yeah,
I was like, wait, it's done. Oh no.
You really have to see it rather than talk about it, but we hope everyone that's intrigued or interested will get an opportunity to have that experience. Over the next year, we're going to tour and take this to planetariums and domes all over the world.
And in a lot of ways, the audience are the star of the show because it's their awareness that we're trying to play with and to try and scoop them up and take them on a journey inside their own minds.
What's fascinating about Mesmerica is that it's very non-traditional storytelling, but it is still a story because it's a journey into an experience of relaxation and happiness where, like James said, the audience is the star, or they're the person who is experiencing this, and they're interpreting it with their own experience and their own background. And so it's a really unique narrative. It's a very personal narrative, and it's amazing how it attracts and impacts people of all ages. It's not just for 20 or 30 somethings, it's for families with young kids, it's for people over 50. It's really pretty transcendent in that regard. And the other thing that's interesting too, I joined the team shortly after this experience in San Diego, and James doesn't actually travel with the show because logistically it's too difficult, but it works anyway because you're looking up at the dome and you're melting into the experience, and even slight head movements can be disruptive. So the show is very beautifully organized and constructed so that you can have that sense of relaxation in how the dome is used and how the images are presented across that space, which is really powerful, which really reflects a lot of what I talked about in the chapter. Because you can't do things in the dome canvas that you can do in cinema, like the inductive storytelling, like the shower scene in Psycho, where you're having quick edits and you're building a scene from portions of a scene. You're actually in the space already, so you disorient the audience by doing that. And this giant canvas, if it's just flashing around you, it's completely disruptive. So it's a different way of approaching that space and recognizing the fact that the audience is inside of it, and any movement that happens on the screen is actually movement that the audience feels that they are engaging in kinetically in that space. It's really a fascinating aesthetic in that environment.
Thank you, Michael. Very, very well said. So appreciate your perspective, because the kind of juxtaposing like traditional narrative into this and up against this chapter, this medium, you did such a nice job, and you gave a lot of examples in your chapter, which were super helpful. And this is a good segue to Ed. Ed, you've not only designed and helped build planetariums, but have also been involved in bringing the dome format into the mainstream. And in your chapter, you covered tech and also your vision of content experiences in this space. So can you describe what your vision is for the future of this format and for immersive integration?
Sure thing, Kate. Thank you. Well, as Michael mentioned, and Mickey, who's at the first planetarium ever in 1923,
right.
This format's been around for a while. And I left aerospace engineering in 1990 to work in a planetarium. And I remember looking up at the dome and going, gosh, this thing is covering my entire field of vision. What if we could map pixels to this thing? And it didn't take long to get into that. In the mid-90s, we were writing custom code for, stitching and edge blending and all this sort of thing. Rendering, it's just so great now with VR going mainstream. All the cameras and the software and the graphics cards are so advanced. The medium is really poised to come into into the mainstream. And the one thing that is missing, we have about 1,700, I believe, digital domes on the planet. But most of them are science centers and museums and school districts and like that, which is great, because these can all become immersive visualization environments for the kids to do virtual field trips and all this sort of thing. But what is missing is arts and entertainment domes. And this is really what Vortex is focused on, is giving all of the artists now who are creating 360 content, whether it's for a headset or whatever, a canvas onto which to project that for large audiences. So these domes that we're designing right now, mostly around the country, can hold up to 2,500 people. the lower right here, this is the Phoenix Domeplex that's in planning. There's 2,500 seats. Some of these domes are stand-up domes or multi-use domes. So those are really the two general types of venues that we're developing. You'll see here, let's have another image here. This is a very simple render of a facility that has 3 domes. And the larger dome is a sit-down theater. The other 2 domes are stand-up. The second largest dome holds the same standing audience as the larger dome holds for sit-down audience. So these are the sorts of facilities that are in development. It's caused us to have to pivot the company from being a content creation studio and a pop-up dome provider for big brands and concerts and this sort of thing, now into becoming a real estate developer. You can see here the main stage is on an elevator platform. There's a ballroom underneath. This is just one typical design. Of course, when you have a sit-down audience like this, it's a dedicated theater. You can't do a dance party in there except on the stage platform. But that's the reason for the other domes is now you have the multi-use. You can have banquets, parties, EDM parties, and that sort of thing. So these venues will be going up. Some of you know about the MSG Sphere. It's a 17,500 seat dome that is under construction in Las Vegas. It's a little slowed down, so it might be 2021 before it goes up. But that's the big arena for what we're doing. So you have everything from the little community college planetarium or a high school planetarium all the way up to a 17,000 seat dome on its way.
Thank you, Ed. And one of the things I've heard you say is domes are like VR without the headset. And it's very interesting to me because the media that gets created is often transferable so the dome content can be ported into the headsets as well. And some of the techniques in the capture, obviously for VR, are the same for the full dome format, which is more of a location-based entertainment. And on that note, Leila, who was such a hero, came in at the kind of the last few weeks of our due date for the book, and we realized that we didn't have a really solid chapter on location-based entertainment, which is also becoming more and more popular. So in your chapter, you've given us so many great examples of references for location-based entertainment and immersive media and the importance of LBE in communities. So would you mind speaking a bit more about your experiences and why these types of LBEs are springing up?
Sure. Thanks, Kate. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today and for being included in the book as well. It's interesting because location-based entertainment is sort of seen or has been seen to date as a subset of out-of-home entertainment. But I think, and something we can talk about a little later, is we're seeing a new form of it post-COVID, which actually takes place in the home, which is still location-based and can still be immersive. And we're seeing a lot of that come to play. But if you look back at the concept of out-of-home, I mean, it goes back to, go back to the Colosseum in Rome, or the fairs in the 1100s, or the pleasure gardens in Europe in the 1500s. It was really about people coming together for a shared experience. And I think cut to the last 5-6 years, and immersive and the various immersive mediums, be it domes, be it VR, be it even physical artscapes that you're immersed in, take that to the next level. And in 2014-15, I was doing a lot of experiential activations for some of the studios and noticing how people were just engaging with the experience and the content, but it was very limited to small audiences and not open to the public. And at the same time, looking at sort of ticket sales, cinema ticket sales were starting to decline, and seeing that people wanted to be more, they wanted to participate in the entertainment experience. They didn't want just that passive consumption of entertainment. And that was further validated in 2016 with the advent of The Void, the location-based VR company that owned by Disney today, with Meow Wolf and their Santa Fe location, the House of Eternal Return, and also Museum of Ice Cream, all came out that year and all exploded, effectively selling out. Both Museum of Ice Cream and Meow Wolf saw about 500,000 visitors in their first year. And so that was really a validation that people wanted these experiences. And I think the last few years of sort of living behind a screen and living in our phones and living in social media had disconnected us with each other. And we're humans, we need connection. And so that somewhat inspired me to want to seek more in the space. And I was actually in a dome with an AR headset, with a HoloLens on my head. And there's some content in the dome, and there's some random props in front of me. And then there's this little manta ray flying around in AR. None of these had any connection to each other, but that was the moment that sort of the light bulb came on. For me, defined what I thought to be mixed reality, which is blending multiple layers in a physical environment. And as we started exploring what could be done, and as much as I love VR, I think there's still a limitation there, especially when it comes to creating connection between people. You're not looking at each other in the eyes yet. And you're also being taken out of your existing reality. And so immersive has a very, it's so visceral that it can impact instantly. It can educate instantly. Even if you don't realize what is happening, you walk away with that connection. And so it's really important for us to keep people grounded in reality while experiencing these fantastical worlds and doing it together. Hence why we chose the HoloLens. We had 40 people with the Unreal Garden. We had 40 people in experience simultaneously. We had a physical plane, we had sound, we had projections, both passive and interactive. We, even at E3 last year, we included haptics, and then you had augmented reality. And so this is the video from E3. This was our first sort of pop-up post the physical location in San Francisco. I think just something to add to what Ed said, you know, it's an artist's canvas. And with immersive, with location-based specifically, this is giving artists a whole new medium to put their work out, whether it's on the digital side of things, and you can create a platform and you can enable a whole new stream of revenue for artists. I mean, ultimately leading to, you know, think of in-app transactions, the same can happen in an experience. To even the Meow Wolf scenarios of the physical build out, these are still incarnations of like hundreds of artists together who have built parts of this. So I think for beyond the community and the connection it creates, beyond the shared experience that people can have, it's also a new platform for creators to get content out there.
Very much so. And I don't think we can have enough of those, right? And in fact, thank you so much for sharing that. We actually got to see the garden. It was really lovely. Thank you, Leila. And to your point as well, Mickey has really designed something quite unique that he's been involved with, using the dome in a unique way. So Mickey, can you speak to that incredible experience at Toscana that you have worked on developing?
Now that you challenge me to do so, it's a little detour, but it's immersive. We do have a very immersive experience. It's called liquid sound, and it involves getting people in body temperature salt water, floating there with underwater music and sounds, and a dome-like visual installation on top. So basically we're working on developing a planetarium that's filled with water, and that does away with the complicated issue of seating in the dome, because many people in the dome realize the worst part is getting a stiff neck while trying to capture all the wonderful content that's happening there all around you. And then you need physiotherapy as you go out, which is also a nice thing for the physiotherapist. But so this liquid sound full dome installation, and will open soon, will combine the beauty of a thermal baths with the beauty of a full dome. So sorry for stuttering, but you wanted to hear it, so Kate, and you know it, so I thought I might as well share it.
Yeah, well, it's such fantastic, it's a fantastic vision. Thank you. And Ed, you know, and all of you, because we're more in the venue space, with the impact of COVID, you know, how is this affecting all of your approaches to where things are headed in the immersive space? Could you speak to that, Ed?
Sure. Well, obviously, in fact, Mesmerica was playing in, I believe, 32 domes and had to be shut down in all of them because of COVID. The show was doing extremely well. It sold over 300,000 tickets. And this is a $35 ticket, average ticket price. So
yeah, we had to shut it down in 2 days. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah. So, but you know, we're immersive event producers, Vortex. We've taken to online. We're looking at some very unusual ways of combining Zoom, like we call this the Hollywood Squares here, presentation where you have everybody sort of in a square window, and you can't control where those windows line up, to where we can actually now have different configurations of people on your desktop, and then how to now move that into the metaverse, essentially. And you have this whole barrier to entry coming into the metaverse, because you need to build an avatar, you need to learn how to navigate that avatar around. Well, there's hundreds of millions of gamers who've already done that, and I think 300 million of them are in Fortnite. There's been some very interesting events happening in Fortnite, you know, starting with the Marshmallow concert and many others. There's a big EDM concert or series coming up in Minecraft, which they actually had to reschedule because Microsoft decided they were going to roll out a new version of Minecraft right in the middle of their, you know, it's difficult being a pioneer sometimes, but yeah, it's a challenge, and it will pass. You know, in 1918, pandemic passed, and then you had the Roaring '20s. Everybody wanted to get out of the house and party. So we see it coming. We just, you know, got to be patient here. It might be another year, or who knows, before we can really fully populate. But one thing that's cool is the theaters we've designed. We're now, because we haven't put up the larger domes yet, we're redesigning them for, you know, more sanitary. There's UVC lights that can sanitize even the air in the room in between shows. So, you know, we're going to be ready for that.
Thank you. Absolutely. It's been pushing the creative space for sure, I believe. And in fact, you know, this Zoom format that we're all working in, I've experienced a couple interesting uses of it in a dramatic way. This Saturday night, I actually saw a bit of an online theater experience called Eschaton by a company called Chorus Productions, and they say it's like somewhere between a virtual club and an interactive performance piece. They use the Zoom venue technology to have different dramatic pieces showcased. So I'm curious, Leila, have you heard of this, or have you heard of some other amazing LVE experiences that are emerging in similar formats?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that has really inspired me during the last few months is the creativity and the way people have pivoted in the space and jumped in and, you know, and sort of taken it to this new level. It's in 2008, 9, 10, video games had a very interesting way of looking at this. You know, you had the physical game that would drop every couple of years, and then you had these extensions that were digital extensions that lived across whether it's mobile or desktop or TV, that would create community and keep people within the world. And I think what COVID is creating, and I'm very excited to see the future of this, is the opposite almost. We've got this now at-home version that is still can be immersive to an extent, and then there can be an extension out of home or the other way around, versus not something that replaces one or the other. The Geffen Playhouse, actually, interestingly, who haven't really played, at least not to my knowledge before now, in the immersive space, have sort of come to market with this new brand, the Geffen Stayhouse, and they've launched the Present, which is it's an immersive experience that's through Zoom, and you effectively buy a ticket, and there's a group of about 20, 25 groups, and they define it as a household. It could be 2 to 4 people, and you're sent a package, and you're not allowed to open it until your date comes up, and then you join the Zoom, and it's almost managed like a theater. There's a stage manager, and then lets everyone in, and then there's a host, and it's very narrative driven, which is super, super interesting. And the host is a magician, and he's telling you a story of his life in quarantine. And through this story, it sparks interactivity or magic tricks and other elements. And that's over an hour-long experience. There's so many creative ways. Alternate reality gaming, which has been around for a long time, is starting to see an interesting comeback in this space, especially digitally. A group called All of Them Witches launched a game called Arcana recently that was entirely digital alternate reality game told through character that you followed in Instagram. And if you followed closely enough, you'd see clues that would lead you down rabbit holes on the internet. And, you can be a voyeur and you don't have to participate. You can just observe all along the way, or you can get really active. And so either way, it's something for everybody. And I would say today I read Sleep No More and Niantic launched a partnership. And that's going to be super interesting. So Niantic, Pokemon Go and Harry Potter, mobile AR experiences, and Sleep No More, one of the original immersive theater companies, who, by the way, do have an element of ARG in their production. You can go down these rabbit holes, are now going to take part of their storytelling and theatrical narrative to the streets and to the world. So I'm really excited to see how these different elements play out.
Thank you, Leila. I know it's super fun and exciting for sure. Michael, at the end of your chapter, you mentioned some of the most important takeaways about creating content for fulldome. Would you mind sharing a few of those highlights with us?
Oh, absolutely. One of the first ones that I think is really important is not to let the medium itself dictate what you do. So don't tell fulldome stories tell stories, and don't let the medium itself force story choices that don't best serve the story's intent. So that may mean that the story you want to tell may require live actors inside the space. It may require some set piece in front of the screen. It may require some sort of prop. There's a show that Adler Planetarium produced called Destination Solar System, where they have an actor that is timed to, a live actor that's timed to what's happening on the dome. And there's a robot voice that he interacts with. There's a spot where he exits the theater and then comes back with a piece of a comet, which is a large piece of ice that he can share with the audience. So don't limit yourself to just what is in that medium. Try to branch it out beyond that. Also think about whether you need to have an opportunity to have branching of your story so that it can change with different audiences, and definitely consider all of the medium's unique qualities, but don't be confined by the restrictions of the medium itself. So don't design backwards. Don't say, I'm doing a full dome show, so I'm going to think just full dome. I want to design an experience for an audience, and let's leverage what that medium can do to tell the best possible story and create the most immersive, exciting experience for the audience.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Mickey, I know that you've talked about some further plans for this year's extension of the festival. Can you give us any updates on that, or any other information that you'd like to share with us?
Well, thank you. Actually, I'll ask Ed to go quickly through the slides that I prepared, trying to introduce you to some aspects that are very dear to us. As I mentioned earlier, we love experimentation. We have a lot of talent from students all over the world to contribute to the festival. And we have a very specific approach that is the genre of immersive music theater. And so this has been alluded to in many of the contributions here. And I don't know, Ed, can you just sort of hit start? Excellent. This first is introducing Kelly Francis, the co-author of our chapter. And so we can go fast and show some of the aspects. Excellent. This is just the fulldome community, the fulldome festival community all over the world. This is the places where we had contributions from over the last 14 years. Next. And yeah, that was the one that's passed. But of course, there is the beauty of coming together in the real flesh, getting everybody's notice. And this is an image of a fulldome theater, and it gives a bit of the proportion of how big is the backdrop of the dome and how small are the actors. And so you have to juxtapose those dimensions, and people are sitting at the controls and the actors are in a gigantic dome acting their stuff. And what next? And this that was a show last year. It's called Cirque du Bauhaus because it was celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Bauhaus. We had a 10 people's orchestra live in the dome, and so their music had to be synchronized with the visuals in the dome. It was a nightmare to direct, but it was worth the effort. So then you had these Bauhausy elements floating through the dome, and the music was coming live from the orchestra. And so this is just an experiment in, oh, this is great, this is interactive, this is remote controlled light bulbs that were handed out to the audience at a certain moment of time. It all went on and people had goosebumps because I had all my light in my hand and the dome was dark, but the light was on. So these are elements to play around with when you explore the dome, not just as a replay venue, but as an interactive theatrical space for community activity, theatrical and interactive and human. And this is why we come together again, and I think the next slide shows it. Oh, this is actually Pedro Zas, a great dome VJ and DJ, so this is another aspect. This is what is revealed to you first time in the universe, that the part 2 of this year's Fulham Festival is actually taking place November 22nd. It will be live for those who want to come to Jena and see this tiny little town with a huge, big, high-end planetarium. But of course, we also be streaming it live again. So all the experience that we gained thanks to Corona crisis, we are now better at streaming than ever before. So you can either come to Jena or see it at home in your dome or in your mini dome or whatever, but it will be available for everybody.
Excellent. Excellent. Hoping to be there for sure. And again, back to your chapter, it has so many wonderful suggestions for some of the ways that the dome theaters can be improved upon too, including chair design, which is also fascinating. But Leila, you know, we were just talking about COVID a little bit, and I know that the new, some of what you're doing now has relevance, most definitely. Can you speak about that a little bit and share with us what you're up to?
Yeah, so, you know, I was working very much within Immersive, and things changed in March, like for all of us. And I ended up, I'm very fortunate to have had an opportunity to join Cleanbox, who, Cleanbox Technology is a smart tech company. They use UVC to decontaminate everything from AR, VR headsets to communication headsets, masks, and soon to be other electronics and accessories. And I actually was one of the first customers about 2 and some years ago through One Dome and through the Unreal Garden. And so have seen the evolution of this product, and having come to market for the purpose of helping companies mitigate risk when it comes to the use of shared devices, especially those that come close to the face or head near the 3 major contagion points. It's very much prevalent in our space today in XR, but also in location-based VR and AR, especially to help LBE come back online quickly. You know, very, very passionate about the space, very sad to have seen such amazing momentum between 2016 and 19, last year really starting to bring LBEs of every kind across the board, not just digital or XR driven, but physical and other form, for there to be such a sudden halt to an industry that was starting to see growth and scale that could perpetually go beyond cinema and gaming down in the future. But I also am pretty confident that it's just a moment for everyone to just regroup a little bit, figure out what's the extension that could lead to in-home and other ways that's not just about the location, but and so hoping to see and see some of this come back, and hoping that these companies can stick through it. I do know that Meow Wolf, for example, is bringing or planning to open their Las Vegas venue, which actually sits in Area 15, which itself is its own LBE. It's an immersive bazaar full of mini LBEs, I guess. And they're looking to open in February, as long as things, I mean, it's very hard to say these days. I mean, you put a date out there and think, and then you see what's happening. So,
so true.
I mean, we'll see a video here. It's very, very vague, like they like to be, just very cloak and dagger here. And I wish I could talk more about the experience, which I can't. But I can tell you that they are taking it to another level, and it's not just physical. So with the Las Vegas location, and then subsequently Denver that opens up after that, Meow Wolf is going to be integrating XR and digital technologies. So it's not just the physical and the tactile, but it will take us into a whole new world. So it's very exciting to see what they're up to.
Super exciting indeed. Thank you. And thank you to
Kate.
Yes.
I'm sorry. There is a question. I'm sorry. I did want to answer a question that was brought up by Alexa. Is that or not?
I think what we're going to do now is our time has ended. So we're going to go into the question and answer portion, and you can definitely take that question on. But we're also going to bring back panel 1 to the conversation. And oh, everybody's up. Sorry, I can't see on my screen. So the question, we've had a number of them from different members, both in the emails and here online. So Leila, please go ahead and take away Alexa's question.
Yeah, so that is, what emerging technology do you think is going to have the biggest impact on LB in the near future? You kind of mentioned some, but
thank you, Jacki.
Yeah, thanks, Jacki. Sorry, I didn't mean to preempt my time there. I think, for me, I have to say the two that are the future are projections and AR. And so the AI side of the responsive nature of projection mapping and then augmented reality, I think those two are going to be driving the future of LB.
Yeah, no, I would like to comment on that as well. And I do agree with you. The venues that we're designing are being purpose designed to accommodate both sit down, stand up, and walk through immersive experiences. And that includes AR overlay. So the idea is to create that canvas, to create that venue, and ultimately have one of these in every city where you can get a digital circ quality experience, spectacular experience in your hometown without having to fly to Vegas, right? That's the idea. And then, who knows what's going to come? It has to be future-proof, right? So by creating these projected environments that can have the AR overlay, the tilted dome has certain, actually, I kind of wanted to respond to Mickey's point because this is an image from my book, from the book, my chapter in the book. And you can see here, when you have a stand-up experience, the dome isn't as effective. But when you start tilting the dome, and especially when you tilt the seating, now you have much better field of view on the dome. And as Mickey was saying, laying down and floating is also an optimal experience. And the other one is like the soaring over California, where you're vertically stacking people, which isn't so much a shared experience with people at that point. But these structures, when we build a stand up and we build a sit down, and maybe a floating experience, you have such a great range of possible artistic creation with those types of venues.
I would like to see one of these personal domes for my hot tub. I think that would be so cool. It will take Mickey's floating and all of this gorgeous imagery, and I'll never want to come out.
Yeah, maybe IMAX can do the way they call it MyMax, right?
MyMax, okay, that sounds like a new product I'd want to try.
No, they do have a home theater. I think it costs $2 million though.
Okay, so we'll all pitch in. There's a question from Kathleen Milnes, her perennial question: what new jobs are being created, and how do we prepare the students for them?
I can say to that since we're teaching fulldome classes at Bowers University for the last 14 years, it appeared to be an experimental niche, but many of those students have now paying jobs as fulldome producers. So fulldome producer is a skill and a quality that's been actually, there is a demand for it. But basically you have to create your own job to be ahead of the curve. It's not just that some of these jobs are waiting there, but most of the jobs that will be created for the next 10 years, you have to create yourself.
Would anyone else like to comment on that?
Well, we've, and in fact, Kate, I know that you've had teaching requests to come teach. We've done workshops in fulldome, also VR. So and I think we've done. Was it CalArts has a program where they use the dome, and it's an immersive media type program. USC has come by and taken classes to our dome. So between all the different immersive media, I think. But what's most needed, at least with the domes, is we got to get the venues out there. That's really the same with LBE. The more actual meow wolves there are, or the voids, or whatever the case may be, that creates commerce. It allows artists to monetize their work, essentially.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would just add. Oh, so I feel like the jobs for the writer creators are still coming. I think it's people who have the tech are making the stories, and it's taking a little while for them to realize that you can bring people in to write and create these experiences, but at the same time, those people who can write them need to be trained. And I've been really pleased with the film schools I've been talking to are starting to create programs teaching immersive media, and I was tapped to start creating an immersive storytelling course for a film school that'll start running next year. So it's beginning, right? The jobs aren't there yet, but we can see that they're coming, and now the schools are trying to step up their programs, and more of them are having VR and AR majors and minors and immersive programs.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that. I think there's also an evolution of certain roles from storytelling to puzzle masters and game designers. There's a whole new opportunity for these types of creators to come in and play in a new landscape in a playground.
And I think world building classes are in high demand and getting more and more rolled out in different universities. I think we have time for one more question, and we have one more question in the queue. Then we'll do the book drawing. So Paul says, I read articles on how VR 360 seems to be a dying media, especially with sites like YouTube 360, but I personally see a future in all of this as a tool for fields like architects who design spaces for communities of people. What are your thoughts on the future of Dome and VR 360?
I'll jump in.
Yeah,
okay,
I have some thoughts too.
I'll jump in. So a lot of people think that we've kind of disappeared, but the truth is we are in enterprise applications right now, because that is where the financial remuneration is, and enterprise applications are in need of storytelling. And the very same entertainment values that have succeeded in entertainment need to be applied in enterprise as well. So when he was talking about architecture, we're actually working with departments of corrections to actually help prisoners adjust to the incarcerated who will soon be released, to help them actually adjust to real world circumstances before they re-enter the real world or society, because they're in the real world. And then also a project for patients in burn treatment, because being inside of a VR headset lowers their pain quotients. And when you put them inside of a cold environment, lowers it even more. Police departments are training, doctors are training, and all of these have story scenarios. So I think, and this is part of what, we're trying to do as a company. We work with the Vancouver International Film Festival. We're trying to raise the bar for content to have better, higher production values in VR and 360, things that people would be willing to pay for, that are great storytelling, great production values. But at the same time that that's happening, there are incredible opportunities for storytellers, at least I believe so, in enterprise right now, because companies and corporations, you start to think about Walmart using VR for training employees all around the world. That's going to be more important. That's why I mentioned to Leila when we were preparing for this about the Pico Neo 2i, because if you have to get 10,000 headsets out to 10,000 employees, and they're all going to need the story that they're in to be trained in some way. So I don't think VR and 360 is dying at all. As a matter of fact, I think it will become more and more relevant. But I think that enterprise and gaming are leading the way for those who have jumped into Half-Life Alyx on Steam.
Yeah, I would also add that museums are doing a lot in the interactive space, especially even as they're closed at the moment. They're allowing you to experience the artwork in a new immersive way. But that's kind of where I'm finding most of my new projects are telling stories in locations and immersive ways.
I probably spent about 12 hours in the Museum of Other Realities last week for the Cannes Film Festival and the Tribeca Festival, looking at all the productions that were added to that navigable 3D environment. And there were a lot of the artists there. I had a lot of great meetings and conversations with people. I got a chance to try everything from comfort of my living room with no shaking hands.
Yeah, if you want to go to the Cannes Film Festival, it's in the Museum of Other Realities until July 3rd. So,
yeah.
So try to see it. Maybe we'll see you there. So I think that was our last question. I do want to say that the book has a lot more chapters that cover other things, such as VR and immersive media for health, for scientific visualization, for education. So this book, it turned out to be an amazing compendium of how we're using immersive media for so many things. And the panelists tonight have all been absolutely wonderful, but it's a slice of the book. So please try and find it if you can at your library or get a copy. We have a special discount code for SIGGRAPH attendees. It gets you 50% off the book, but right now we're going to give away one. And everybody who's registered has been put in a database, I believe. And so you have a name on your line in the database. And that's, oh, look at this. Oh, I didn't know we were going to be so fancy. Now, you need to be online, I think, if hopefully the person that gets picked is online, because we need to let the publisher know where to send the physical copy. So,
by the way, I just wanted to mention that we have people on the webinar from 13 different countries, including Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, Costa Rica, Germany, Hong Kong, India, Ireland, Mexico, Poland, and Thailand.
Wow. And it's great that IGI is a global publisher because they can ship the book to anywhere.
Yes, and special thanks to them for the complimentary copy.
All right. We actually have a raffle. We're going to do it this way. So here we go.
Whoa.
Yeah, isn't that funny? It's everybody's name. Okay.
I love this new Zoom technique.
By the way, I have a 3D version of the book that I created.
Oh.
And if anybody wants one, I'll send them the GLB file so they can install it in their Oculus Home or any other their virtual environments that they like to haunt.
Maya is online.
Very
and
cool.
Awesome offer, Greg. So,
and Greg, I'll add to that. We're talking about bringing the book to life and making it interactive. That there were a lot of pieces of content that we talked about tonight, and I know that there are so many listed in the book. And so I just wanted to remind people that you can use the Look Club, the look.club, to find those pieces so that when you're reading the book, if you want to put on your headset and experience it for context, that's a great way to do it. Most of them are in there already. And I think after tonight, now that all the panelists know that it exists, they can go submit their content and everything will be in there when you're looking at the book.
Nice.
So we have a winner.
Yeah, Maya, yay!
Awesome.
Well, all right, let me, I can get this from you later, but I'll grab what you've got here. Thanks.
Here's the copy for free for everybody.
I got it. Okay. That was, I think it might be the first Zoom random drawing I've ever been at. So
beautiful.
We're going to keep innovating. All of the panelists, all of the attendees are all innovating. And even Elizabeth, that was a great innovation. That was amazing. Kudos to you.
That was cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Well, thanks everybody for showing up. Thanks to the panelists. Jacki and Kay, thanks for pulling this together. Thanks to the Executive Council of the LA ACM SIGGRAPH. We love you all and have a good night.
Thanks.
Night, Mickey.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, SIGGRAPH.